I'm a blast from the past.
Send the maniac to catch one.
Bad aim, Blondie.
Movie license games. Yes, that's something that Acclaim was really good at. And here we have an example of it. And that's also the game we're going to review. It's Demolition Man. Based on the 1993 movie from Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. The game plays in the future. It plays in San Angeles, a city that's really just Los Angeles, but then in 2032 in the future, and the city has become really peaceful and really civilized. There's not really much crime anymore and everything's kind of hunky-dory since some kind of religious type who always says "Be well" has taken over. But there's a problem, because there have been some old villains that have been sentenced to a 70-year in cryo prison that have escaped. And our villain, Phoenix, played by Wesley Snipes, has escaped. And he decided to break into a museum of weapons and violence, and he got all the guns and he started to wreak havoc. And because he swears a lot, he gets a lot of tickets for swearing. At least that's what happens in the movie. That's not really what happens in the game, but the police force doesn't really know how to deal with these kinds of villains from the 90s anymore. And so they decide to unthaw an old cop. And that cop is played by Sylvester Stallone. And they basically decide, well, we have to send a maniac to catch a maniac. And that's basically how it goes, and that's what the game is about. The game is released in 1995, 2 years after the release of the movie. Why the game wasn't released in 93 is beyond me, but I'm thinking it's because the movie wasn't particularly popular. It was not exactly a box office success and it's kind of difficult to find a copy on DVD. I'm still looking for a copy of it, but I have seen the movie a few times on TV. But yeah, for some reason Acclaim decided to make a game for it in 1995. Probably because they could secure the rights really cheaply, because they did pretty much every Schwarzenegger and Stallone movie on the face of the earth that they could get their hands on. And maybe they got some kind of package deal with Stallone or with the movie studios to get the rights for the movie cheaply. That could be the reason, I don't know. Or maybe they just liked the movie and thought they could make a reasonable good game out of it. And actually it is, even though Acclaim was known for making bad games. Demolition Man is not a bad game, just like Judge Dredd, it's quite alright. And it's a lot better than Cliffhanger. A little bit about the game. Demolition Man is a action platformer, a bit like Contra or Probotector, but yeah, it's just shooting with platforming and it's actually quite fun. The game also has a high frame rate and reasonably smooth control and a good pacing. Also, I think the music is pretty fitting and it's nice and nitty-gritty. I'm going to compare the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive versions here. Sadly, I do not own the Sega CD version. I don't have a Mega CD and, well, I just don't have that version of the game. From what I've heard, it's really just a Mega Drive game, but with a slightly better music from the Super Nintendo version sampled in CD quality. That's basically what it is. Well, you'd be wondering why, because the Super Nintendo version is essentially a straight Mega Drive port. Yes, this game was made for the Mega Drive primarily, and when they ported it to the Super Nintendo, they did absolutely not make any improvements. The graphics were directly taken from the Mega Drive game, and they just added maybe a little bit of extra color and detail, but not much. Also, the music sounds almost as gritty as the Mega Drive. It's almost like one of those infamous ST ports on the Amiga. It's just, well, a straight up port from a game that was developed for the Mega Drive. So, I'd say let's compare it. And there's something really odd about the PAL version on the Mega Drive, because I have a modded Mega Drive, so I can do it in 60 Hz too, but my DVD recorder doesn't like 60 Hz recordings. But the odd thing is that in stage 2 The game plays extremely fast in the 50 Hz mode, and you have to actually make it go slower by putting it in 60 Hz mode. That sounds counterintuitive, because normally in 60 Hz the game would play faster, but not in this case. I think it's some really strange glitch, or the game was probably optimized for PAL machines. I don't know, but yeah, you're going to see really fast gameplay on stage 2 in the Megadrive version. So let's have a look at the game, shall we? So first up is the SNES version. This was developed by Alexandria, a very unknown and obscure developer that only developed about 3 games. I've checked them out on Moby Games, and well, that's all I could find, that they developed only about 3 games. And well, why acclaim with such an obscure developer is beyond me. I have absolutely no idea about that developer's history and what happened to them. So, we jump straight out of the helicopter, and Sylvester Stallone says we have to send a maniac to catch a maniac. So, and there we go. We are on the rooftops, and we're already in a shootout, basically, and yeah, it's pretty full of action, as you can see. There's a lot of shooting going on, and some running and some jumping and some climbing of ladders, and this is all pretty good fun, as you can see. I think the jumping controls are nice and fluid, the game controls well, the game has a very good pacing to it. Really no complaints here. Yeah, this is actually pretty decent. You can also shoot C4 charges, like what happened right there. If you shoot one of those C4 bombs, they'll drop down and explode and frag some of the enemies, but they can also work against you, so you have to be a little bit careful. And now we're bungee jumping, and that's actually a really cool scene, and yeah, I quite like that. There's not that many games that let you do this, and we pick up an extra life here, and we try to jump for something, and well, if you jump too high you fall to your doom. So yeah, you're not completely immortal, you still have to pay a little bit of attention where you drop down. There's another C4 charge blowing up, and we're shooting some guys. And there's a crate with some ammo and some health pickups. And you can also throw bombs or grenades, which is quite useful. And this is the end of stage 1, where you just first face Phoenix, and he'll basically set all the charges, and you just have to make a run for it. And well, after the stage has ended, you are rewarded with your score, and the police says MDK, which means murder that kill. So our villain Phoenix has now entered the museum, where he's gotten hold of all the guns, and here you have to rescue all these religious people who all say be well when you rescue them. And also here there are well, C4 charges that you can blow up. In order to gain extra ammo and weapons, you can shoot display cabinets, and yeah, that's how you get your ammo. For instance, here on that diagonal wall there was a display cabinet, and when you shoot the glass you gain your extra ammo and your lives. And here we blow up some C4 charges. There's a difference with the Megadrive version here. In the Megadrive version you can fire continuously, but in the Super Nintendo version you have to keep reloading, which is very annoying, especially here in this boss fight. What you will see later is that in the Megadrive version this boss fight and also that whole overhead stage is insanely fast, but I think that is some kind of bug in the game actually. So maybe they didn't test it properly, but once you've beaten Phoenix you fall through a glass floor and you enter the third stage of the game. And this is back in platform action, as you can see. And there right is Phoenix, and if you shoot him he'll drop a extra life pickup, but you have to be fast in order to catch it. Basically you can't really catch it unless you really make a big leap for it, and chances that you just die by falling into the debris, so it's not really worth doing that. Well, and yeah, we're just running on some platforms here and shooting some guys. Yes, it's a little bit generic, but it's all good fun. And I quite like that you can just shoot these guys off the ladders and you can just really blast them off. Also, you can occasionally shoot things in the scenery, such as neon signs. You saw that happening a little bit earlier with that car parts sign, and I think that was quite nice. Or that cafe sign that you see on the right corner. For instance, here you can blow up those neons. That's just a nice touch. And you can also sling, as you can see, on ropes and cables, so there's not just bungee jumping but also a little bit of slinging on cables. And you have to watch out for those fumes, because well, they can kill you. So getting on the platforms can be a little bit tricky, but you just need to practice a little bit. You get the hang of it pretty quickly, actually. Well, I have absolutely no complaints about the controls. I think they're alright, although grabbing the ladders can sometimes go a little bit too quick. The third stage boss is, well, I didn't get any further than this. I haven't quite figured out the pattern yet. But one thing I do know is that you should not shoot those things on the left, because Simon Phoenix will completely kill you as soon as you get on top of there. Apparently you have to shoot those guys running below him. And well, if you shoot them a couple of times and then shoot diagonally upwards, he seems to lose some of his health. So that's kind of strange. As you can see, his health bar is depleting also after you've shot well, a couple of those guys, but you have to dodge his fire, so you have to be careful. You can't just run around there like that, what I'm doing now. If he comes about, you have to be careful, and well, it looks like he's gone now, but still he seems to get back. So I haven't figured out that pattern yet. And then, once your game over, Simon says you lose. So let's head to the Megadrive version. And the Megadrive version has the exact same graphics. The sound is a little bit grittier, which I like. It just sounds really good on the Megadrive. The Megadrive's FM sound chip really does the game a lot of justice. It sounds a lot better than those flat muffled samples on the Super Nintendo. Besides, the Super Nintendo version more or less sampled a lot of the sounds from the Megadrive version, so it seems. So here's a little demonstration that shows you your various attack patterns and how you perform them. Yeah, I think that's quite nice. Besides that, well, yeah, it's exactly the same as the Super Nintendo version. We jump out of the helicopter again, and well, Sylvester Stallone says again, send a maniac to catch a maniac, and yeah, it's essentially rinse and repeat. It's just exactly like the Super Nintendo, not any difference at all. So, well, as you can see, the graphics are also the same, although the color looks a little bit brighter for some reason. But yeah, they just look just as gritty as the Super Nintendo. Actually, maybe they look a little bit grittier. And here's that C4 charge again that you can blow up. Again, you have to be careful that you don't blow up yourself. But yeah, I quite dig the Mega Drive sound. It sounds so gritty, and yeah, it's very fitting of this game. Another thing you can notice is that the gameplay is a little bit faster too. That's not really a surprise, considering the Mega Drive had a faster CPU. and it shoots the game really well. And that was another bit of bungee jumping, and yeah, the bungee jumping is quite cool. But yeah, the really weird thing with this version is the second stage. It plays so insanely fast in the PAL version, which is counterintuitive because you would expect the NTSC version or the 60 Hz version to be faster, but for some reason that's not really the case. I think they have optimized the game for PAL machines. But what you're about to see now is that, well, the gameplay on the PAL machine can actually be really fast, but I think it's more of a bug with this game. Well, once you see the score and instructions for the next mission, you will see that it's going to be really fast, just insanely fast. Also, you can just keep shooting. It's almost like you have auto fire, and I quite like that. You can really, well, wreak a lot of havoc, like it's a Die Hard movie, almost. And yeah, this is just good fun. It's just a simple, mindless action. But the boss fight, on the other hand, is almost impossible at this speed. And I actually switched the machine to 60 Hz mode to play around with the boss, and well, a week before I recorded it, I actually managed to beat the second stage boss in this version too, but sadly I could not succeed doing that during the recording of this review. But you will see the 60 Hz mode, well, at least what my recorder did to it, because it produces a black screen, because my recorder doesn't like recording two different types of signals unless you put it in a different recording mode. Yeah, when I transfer the footage I have to record it to a DVD, and the recorder doesn't like making mixed format CDs. Well, it can't make a multi-format DVD, which is a little bit of a bummer. So maybe in the future I may have to invest in a scaler and a modern capture card perhaps, in order to record 60 Hz footage. Because, well, doing that with my current setup is just a little bit complicated, because the machine has to be explicitly set to NTSC mode, and then it can make an NTSC DVD, and when I want to switch back to PAL I have to put the machine in a different mode, so it's a little complicated. So that was the gameplay footage, and now it's time for the conclusion. So there you have it, that was Demolition Man on the Super Nintendo and on the Mega Drive. Not a bad game, I must say. I think the game is actually quite alright for a mid-90s action platformer, even though it's based on a licensed property from a movie. Yeah, I remember this game getting a somewhat bad review in the Power Limited magazine back in 1995. Power Limited was a Dutch games magazine that is still around today. They're one of the last game magazines that you can still buy in the shops. But at the time they were quite, well, got pretty annoyed with platform games and especially licensed games. So in '95 they kind of gave it a bad review. And they compared it to many other licensed games. I think looking back at it at the time, that was kind of fair, because, well, the market was really saturated with those types of games. But looking at it in retrospect, more than 20 years later, I think the game is worthy of a better score. It's really not that bad of a game. Considering it's a licensed game from Acclaim, yeah, I think it's actually quite alright. They could have certainly done worse with it, considering their Schwarzenegger games like Last Action Hero or Terminator 2, not the arcade game, but the other Terminator 2 game. So, in viewing it from that perspective, I think Demolition Man is not that bad. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time. So now the game's verdict according to Power Unlimited. This is in Dutch. Het rapport voor dit spel, de graphics een 7,8, het geluid krijgt een 7, de originaliteit krijgt een 3, want het is geen origineel spel. De speelbaarheid een 5,9, het is dus maar een beetje zo-zo. Het heeft veel levels, maar het verhaal is wel vet cliché. Het heeft oude koek gameplay en nou het groene conclusieblokje. Acclaim heeft weer een baanbrekend werk afgeleverd. Let op, sidescrolling platformpje, guns, springen en schieten. Eindbaasje hier, eindbaasje daar. Extra levens en ammo verstopt in een kisten onderweg. Leveltje in, leveltje uit. Trappetje op, trappetje af. Spelletje erin, spelletje eruit. En eruit blijft hij.
Well.